Yeah. Every time they water.
Would you like me to
Good afternoon, everyone.
I will start recording.
Recording in progress.
It is December 11th, Monday, 2023, and it is my honor to call together the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District Board. May I have a roll call, please?
Director Oglesby? Here. Director Paul? Here. Director Eisenhart? Director Riley? Director Edwards?
Here.
Vice Chair Anderson? Here. Chair Adams?
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. Are there any additions and corrections on the closed session agenda by District Council? Okay. Sounds like that's a bit of a, well, not a correction, but a reassignment. Okay. Is there any member of the public who wishes to comment on the closed session agenda today?
There are public present.
And are there any members of the public with their hands up?
I see no raised hands, Chair Adams.
Excellent. Okay. With that, I will recess our board and we will go into closed session and we'll resume oh, sorry, I need to announce what the closed session items are. We have closed sessions items 1, 2, and 3, a public employee performance evaluation, a conference with legal counsel on existing litigation, and conference with legal counsel on another litigation. With that, we will recess to closed session and we'll return with a call to order for the regular meeting at 6 o'clock. Thank you very much. We're in closed session now.
And Susan, we'll see you in an hour.
Yes, Susan, if you can exit the meeting and return at 6 p.m., please. No, Susan.
Recording stopped.
Okay, I'll need to remove
Okay, so we are going to order the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Monroe County Water Management District for today, Monday, December 11th, and it is 6:04 p.m. I'm sorry, we're a couple of minutes late to start, but we're rolling now. I was wondering if Tom Rowley would be willing to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I think we need to have another roll call as we are doing after the session.
Director Oglesby,
Here.
Director Paul,
Here.
Director Eisenhart,
Here.
Director Riley.
Here.
Does someone have a device on? Thank you. Director Edwards,
Here.
Vice Chair Anderson. Here. Chair Adams. All members are present.
There are none.
Now this is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on anything that is not on this evening's agenda. 3 minutes for your comments.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members. I've given you periodic updates on what happens when an agency or government puts too much reliance on one source. And I'm happy to report that in Honolulu, in this city and county of Oahu, that the 20 huge buried underwater fuel tanks that service Pearl Harbor have been emptied starting in September of this year through October to 99.5% empty. This is ordered by the Secretary of Defense. However, what came out in all the investigations that were done is there was a corruption of the water mains under a big part of Honolulu. And people were injured, and there was attempts by the Navy to cover it up. So we know what happened here. We had a spill in January about 4 years ago. And by relying on one aquifer for 2/3 of all the water that serves the Monterey Peninsula, we are making the same risks. And no matter how many guarantees on valves that are supposed to automatically work and what have you, there is always a chance for a screw up. And that is the thing that concerns me. And it's concerned me a long time. When you put all your marbles, or 2/3 of them now, in one basket, there suddenly things can happen to mess us up. So again, I'm in favor of the desal plant that's being proposed by Cal-Am Water. And I think it would make sense for you guys as a board to get behind and be supportive of that. The sooner we can get off of over-reliance on the Seaside Basin aquifer, the better off this community will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raleigh. Are there any other members of the public who wish to make comment?
Chair Adams, I see no raised hands.
Excellent. Thank you very much. With that, we will close public comment and move forward to our consent calendar. We have 4 items on consent. Is there any member of the board that wishes to pull anything from our consent calendar?
I like for you to pull number 3.
Number 3, okay.
Well, I was going to talk about that one anyway.
Well, that's why.
Well, there we are. Good.
So we
Great,
can get it out.
great minds. Is there any other member of the board who wishes to pull anything from consent for either comment or a question? Okay, is there any member of the public who wishes to pull anything from the consent calendar?
Chair Adams, I see no raised hands.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to item number 3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Reason I pulled it, we got a new CFO. And I will let the general manager talk about him, and we can talk about his salary a little bit and vote him in.
Well, I do want to introduce you to Nishil Bali, who joins us after having been finance director for the city of Claremont, California, finance director for the city of Rohnert Park, financial specialist, whose title escapes me, at the city of Berkeley, California, and about 6 years before that, with the city and county of San Francisco, in a variety of roles. He's going to be a very strong addition to our team, which I think fulfills one of the criteria we were looking for. We had 5 very good candidates. One dropped out. Predictably, I think we could tell. The other 4 were outstanding. And this hire is the pick of the litter, if you will. I think we've done very good, and we're very pleased to have Michelle join us. I also want to point out that our previous CFO, Suresh Prasad, will have his last day as of January 5th. You will be looking at a temporary contract as a retired annuitant later in the agenda. And today is Suresh's birthday.
Oh, my goodness. Happy birthday, Suresh.
Glad you're here on your birthday.
Okay. Thank you for that report. And thank you for pulling that for discussion. Is there any further discussion on item number 3? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. So we have Mr. Edwards and Mr. Riley. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. I do not think we need to have a roll call vote since we are all present. Okay, great. All right. And now we will go to the general manager's report.
Thank you. This should go relatively quickly, I believe. We'll pull up the compliance report with the State Water Board and the Seaside Water Master. And keep in mind, it's only 2 months into the water year, so very little data, of very little meaning. So I'm going to go through it relatively quickly. There we go. Are you going to run slideshow, Sarah, or? Yeah. See if the remote works. Sorry about that, yeah.
I'm so sorry as well. Please forgive me. I thought about it and then just jumped ahead. Why don't you go ahead and just give us a couple of minutes and tell us about yourself a little bit.
Could you use the mic, sir? So the public can hear you. Thank you.
Michelle Bali, new CFO here at MPWMD. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to working with you all. I'll just say that both I and my team are committed to providing outstanding stewardship, financial stewardship, quality service, and support to all the divisions here, so we can meet the district's goal and work together and serve all the stakeholders that we have. So glad to be here.
Thank you very much for coming up and joining us. I hope that you find your employment with the Water District as pleasant as we find working as a board of trustees for the Water District. So thank you very much.
I'm sorry about that.
Thank you. I am more sorry than you are.
Don't leave us.
Please
So-
forgive my gross inhospitable approach. So at any rate,
So I'm going to jump ahead
Thank you.
to production for customer service, our measure of customer demand or feeding the system to meet demand. But one thing I want to point out here is 2 months into the year, we're actually higher in demand than the 2 months of the prior year by approximately 69 acre feet. And I cautioned us all at the end of the water year when we were about 400 plus acre feet below last year, that some of that could have to do with the irrigation season and the heavy rains and so forth. So already you see a slight reversal, and we'll be tracking it. But I think that very flatness of the curve that you saw at last board meeting, where we really have now hit 9 years in a row of right in that 9,300 to 9,500 acre feet per year. That's a very good measure of demand, and clearly 3,000 acre feet below when the desal plant was sized. The other thing I want to show us is that rainfall to date, year to date, is actually a little below average. So we'll wait and see what happens in December. We are not filling and spilling at the dam yet, which means there's no ASR diversion yet. Our big date last year was about the 18th of December when rainfall was pretty solid. The dam spilled, we met our requirements. So we'll be watching it, but we're not there yet. It's pretty early and they're still predicting an El Nino year, so we might see a lot. And as you would expect, then stream flow is a little bit below average, but again, only 2 months. So that concludes the compliance reporting. I want to call out a couple of items in item 6 and item 7. Yeah.
Yes.
I was curious about, I don't know why I haven't asked this question for several years. But ASR has a threshold flow that's required before you can take. Does that same threshold apply to table 13?
Different, but similar. The ASR has a kind of a mixed bag based on the time of year and what's called an attraction event. Is the lagoon open or is the lagoon closed? So there's different minimum stream flows. Whereas table 13 water rights have a season similar to our ASR right, meaning December through May. There are in-stream flow requirements, but they're a little more consistent than our ASR, and our 2 ASR water rights have different in-stream flow requirements. So sometimes we'll look to injection under one right, and sometimes we'll look to injection under the other right. But I would say ASR is more complex than table 13.
Do they require another agency approving the interpretation that's applied here? It's all, you have the jurisdiction.
We have the jurisdiction, and in fact, CalAm looks to us to read the gauges and signal where we're at, even on other things like in the summertime when they go to the point of shutting off the upper river wells, we're usually the ones providing the data on the consecutive days in a row of flow requirements, and then the same to be able to flip the upper wells back on due to higher flows. They'll look to us to give them that signal. So that's John Lear and his team with all the meter gauges.
Madam Chair, thank you. Dave, are we ready for ASR? Could you tell us if we're ready or not? I know it haven't rained as much, but I think we can check the gauges and everything.
Yeah.
And I see nobody here from CalAm tonight.
We met with CalAm, so district engineer, John Lear, that's Maureen Hamilton, John Lear, myself, and 4 representatives of CalAm last Wednesday or Thursday, I can't recall now at this point. And we went through a series of ASR related and other related status of wells in terms of construction, permitting, the rehabilitation. So some of the wells underwent rehab, aren't demonstrating enough increase in capacity, but rather than go to replace them immediately, they're going to keep them online for ASR so we can get as much out of them as we can get during the season, then go into replacing. So yeah, we walked through all of those issues. You may remember last year, everyone said they were ready, and then it took us collectively, CalAm's team and our team, a day to get all the valves set correctly. And so we don't know for sure what the first big rain is going to render, but yeah, we're talking and trying to make sure that we can do the best we can.
Have you heard CalAm say they're going to have one of their pumps completed this fall in time for next fall, for next winter? But did I hear that wrong?
Well, I'm not sure pump or well, there's 2 replacement wells. So Schulte is coming on shortly. I think it should be on by February, which means during the season. There's a replacement well in the valley that does not seem to be getting started, and it may be kind of hanging with the Rancho Cañada Villages project. So you don't want to go in and grade for a well, sink a well, and then have a whole construction project come back in afterwards and bulldozer goes over the wellhead type of thing. Yeah, but there's we're still going to be limited. So all of the limits that we talked about last year for the ASR season, not all of them will exist. Unless we have some sort of tragic flooding again, where you lose some of the upper valley wells. But we're going to be constrained on injection because ASR 3 has been slated for extraction, and now ASR 4, which because it's paired with ASR 3 wasn't available last year anyway. That'll be the case again this year, except I guess on the good news side, ASR 4 will now be in production. So it can offset the loss of ASR well number 1, which we took away for travel time issues related to pure water. So, but there will still be some constraints. So it's not going to be a perfect ASR season.
Percentage wise, is it gonna be above what it was last year because of the number of constraints?
We are set up to do better than last year because we lost, the Pierce well was out. Berwick number 9 well was out for a period of time, a week, 10 days, something like that. And then we had the outages due to flooding. So hopefully no flooding. But then the other wells should be available. So I think the Carmel River or the Carmel Valley situation is better than last year. So get rid of those constraints. This side, the Seaside Basin, the same constraints this year.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes.
Very quickly, we talked about pumps, et cetera, a couple of months ago. We had a representative from Cal-Am here. Given the production schedule for ASR 3 and 4, and also that some of the pumps which aren't being replaced because there's some capacity issues. Given the ASR constraints that we've talked about, are we still able to maximize the capacity with the pumps that we have? If that makes sense.
Yeah, so we look like we'll be able to maximize what we take out of the valley and just not maximize our ability to put water in the ground. So that'll be the limiting issue. And we've had some other interesting ideas that we've talked about. If the district wanted to consider spending on a 3rd injection well at the Santa Margarita site, we might be able to overcome the injection constraints, but there's a cost benefit involved going forward for a number of years, and then for many years going forward, and it would offer some redundancy and so forth. So that may be something we come to you to talk about. See
For next year's budget?
Yeah. Yep.
Redundancy with these.
Yeah, not with ASR. He wanted to sell plant.
Do I need to get my gavel? Okay, if we can continue.
Yeah,
on.
so item 6 is just an update on water supply projects. I think the staff note speaks for itself. I do want to highlight that there is a section on the desalination component of the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project. I think it gives you a more realistic set of understandings about what it will take to meet the permit conditions of the Coastal Commission, as well as some additional hurdles at the Public Utilities Commission. And we'll just let the staff note speak for itself, but yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, first George and then Alvin.
Thank you. Yeah, great staff. No, outstanding. I've been trying to send this out. Now, I've seen our public outreach is online, and you and the Public Outreach Committee, can we make something out of this? I believe this is a great item to get to the public. I know Cal-Am trying to put the band back together, but I think we need to tell the public what our side of it is, so.
And I'll say yes and no. I think I want to hold a few weeks because I want to talk to council about how we get some of these concerns in front of the right regulators.
Okay.
But there's already been an interest expressed by some of the regulators to better understand these hurdles.
Thank you, but great job. I like it.
Through the chair, real quick question. On page 34, the first A, small a, you make reference to a phase, you're doing segmented in phase. Does the word phase mean piecemeal, and then is that related?
It could be. You know, we typically hear the word piecemeal when we're talking about
All
CEQA
right.
and how an environmental impact report is done. I do believe that we are at a point where it's not a phased project if you're required to install a 4.8 million gallon per day plant for at least 2 years. It's a 4.8 MGD plant. And so you've got now the concrete configurations of the wellheads that have changed. You have at least verbally to the Coastal Commission, they said they were going to extend the length of each slant well. There is modeling work that is currently being concluded in front of the State Water Board's hearing officer. That's different modeling for a project that wasn't modeled in the certified EIR. And there may be some designs related to the batching of brine for a smaller plant in order to meet the needs of the ocean plan. If all collectively or some subset of those four things, and there are others, mean that you don't have a certified EIR that matches the project you're trying to build, then yeah, I mean, it's sort of piecemealing. I think there's a bit of a desire to have the Coastal Commission's environmental authority take care of all that and say, don't look back on the certified EIR. But I think that's one of the huge murky questions right now is there even a certified EIR on the project that's currently being proposed? And if not, should there be a supplemental or an amendment? I don't know enough yet. And I think we've talked about the authority, environmental authority of the Coastal Commission, and certain things will get tested. So. Yeah, suffice to say that ammonia, which is in wastewater, rises, and brine, which is in or high saltiness, is in the brine, which sinks. And so trying to perfect what the angle of the dispersion jets should be so that the ocean plan is met under both cases, especially if you have a case where it's not even operating, desal's not operating at 4.8, but it's in a period where it's operating at half that. How do you get enough pressure to get dispersal so that things don't just fall to the ground and create a salt slick, and ammonia doesn't just rise to the surface and create a.
Has they ever issued their opinion on first project?
No, so all the modeling was kind of left to the outfall project, and the coastal development permit was left separately. So you may remember that one of the conditions of the Coastal Commission's permit is you secure an outfall agreement and an NPDES permit and, you know, all of the environmental work for the outfall. And so that kind of work is underway.
Type to the outfall.
Yeah.
Question I had on next page, 36.
The second paragraph. Make reference to Callahan must either regain revolving funding or re-enter discussions with the district. I read that like both should happen, but that was my question. Is it either or do both have to happen?
Yeah, so the whole financing of the debt component of the desalination plant was the company agreed to take a lower equity component. Typically, it'd be like 56% equity, 44% debt, corporate equity, corporate debt. They agreed to approximately 23% equity and a significant amount of debt, but also public pay-as-you-go monies. And the public pay-as-you-go monies during construction has been reduced So the equity piece might go up, but the debt piece was going to be twofold. One was going to be what's called a securitization that the district would issue in the public debt markets. And to the extent possible, some other public grant or debt. The project got permission for 100% of its debt to come through the state revolving fund, the safe water drinking fund component of the state revolving fund. And, you know, the investment banker on our team and myself and all of us said, well, that's cheaper, better, faster. So we filed a letter in conjunction with a CalAm advice letter, same timing, saying we will stand down because the 2018 PUC decision said we're very much interested in this securitization, this public debt. And we want you to pursue that and report back to us. And if it is viable, then that will satisfy the public debt component. And so we said, we will stand down because this is a much better way to go. Then in roughly October or September of last calendar year, the state pulled back and said, due to a lack of progress, we're taking you off the qualified list. Well, that puts us back to the default position, which is the public debt component is supposed to then be a securitization through us. And then it was only, again, in the 2018 PUC decision, it was, and if the securitization doesn't work for some reason or proves to be too expensive or, you know, the kind of a checklist of things, then the alternative is the traditional corporate debt financing. So the fallback position from not having state revolving fund debt is you're supposed to be back talking to us about a securitization. And if we can't get that done, then fall back to the corporate debt position. So there's been no discussion whatsoever about what the PUC directed them to do and where we stand relative to it. The easiest fix would be, of course, to requalify. But there's a problem with that because when they first qualified, the state safe water revolving fund had a boatload, a huge balance of undistributed money, and they were under instruction from the state to get that money out. And so San Diego Pure Water and the CalAm desal plant got in the hundreds of millions of dollars of commitment. Now that money's been pushed out and it's unclear that they have the same balance of available funds. So
Does that put, that bring our securitization default process as a shared expense, a shared way to cover it? I mean, it's the revolving fund money is not available to the same amount, but it's to some amount. Then would we be a fallback partner in that?
we should be, if you follow the PUC's decision that permitted the desal plant to be
Right.
built.
And so then my last question, do we have discretion about participate?
The board does have discretion. Yeah.
Any
Sorry
other
about that,
questions?
Ram.
It's quite all right. That's okay. You got what you wanted, I think. Any other questions from the board? Okay, keep on moving forward then.
And the last item in the general manager's report is just to make publicly available to our constituents, kind of the year end of how we did on our strategic goals that were adopted earlier in the year. You had seen this document already, so it's just there as a public information item. And that concludes the GM report.
Thank you very much for that. Is there any further discussion on anything in Mr. Stoltz's report?
Chair Adams, I do see a raised hand in the public.
All right, let's go ahead and take public comment.
Caller ending in 312. I will, if you would like to state your name, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. Good evening. Margaret Ann Coppernall speaking. Congratulations on a brilliant report and analysis of the MPWSP Coastal Commission conditions remaining to be fulfilled. The CPUC, as pointed out, has not approved, but in the past even denied the proposed smaller desal 4.8 MGD project. The models presented in the MPWSP certified EIR by both Geoscience and Hydrofocus contain fraudulent data because that modeling data was tampered with, skewed to deceive the CPUC to acquire approval. Please consider inviting Water Plus Ramp President Dr. Ron Wiseman to submit his scientific peer-reviewed published reports on this EIR modeling, tampering, and falsification of data for your review and consideration in your deliberations and analyses. From my perspective, this statistical analysis by an expert PhD statistician merits your attention and inclusion in your reports. These EIR statistical reports are of game changer significance in my humble viewpoint. They demonstrate and elucidate the nefarious intentions to deceive from the very beginning. As former Marina Coast Water District General Manager Keith Vandermetten stated years ago, the MPWSP is a project to disguise a groundwater extraction project as a desalination project. There was a lack of integrity at the outset that cannot be allowed to stand. Thank you so much for your truly exceptional work and prodigious in-depth studies of all facets of our water supply issues. God bless you with abundantly happy, fulfilling holidays. You all deserve the very best, as you are a highly valued community partner and asset. We love you and highly respect and admire you all. David Stoltz, you are a beautiful star with a superb staff and support, and this board is truly outstanding in every regard.
Why, thank you, Ms. Coppernoll. We will be very happy to accept those remarks. Are there any other members of the public that wish to comment on anything on the general manager's report?
Chair Adams, I see no other raised hands.
Thank you very much, Sarah. With that, we will then close the presentation by the general manager and move to our district council.
Good evening, Madam Chair. I have several items to review with you. First of all, it's reportable action from the closed session of Monday, November 13th. A reportable action taken earlier at the 5 p.m. session this evening, and then an update on pending litigation. As to the reports of reportable action, the only reportable action did occur on November 13th, and that was the one item, the pending litigation that was proposed for the Water Management District against Cal-Am with respect to the Measure J eminent domain action. That matter, the board did provide direction to staff and council to prepare a complaint to acquire the California American Water Distribution System in order to fulfill the Measure J directive in accord with the October 10th resolution of necessity that was adopted by your board. The board also designated Doug Dennington of Rutan and Tucker as lead litigation counsel and designated Edward Schexnader of Shoot-Mahali as co-counsel for LAFCO issues. That litigation team is to report to your general manager and to me as your general counsel. That action was unanimous. As an update on pending litigation, the complaint is being prepared. There are several moving components to that, including the necessity to prepare documents for the tax assessor and also the recorder's office. Those matters will be completed. We are hopeful of filing that complaint this week. The other item of pending litigation, just this morning, we did receive signed today Judge Will's order in the Water District's petition for writ of mandate against the Local Agency Formation Commission of Monterey County, or LAFCO. And the judge did sign the proposed judgment as prepared by the district in favor of the district and against LAFCO and Cal-Am. That is now a signed order that came out today. There are some moving parts to that. We are still assessing that and we'll be reporting that to the board in closed session next month. According to the terms of the writ, the matter will be going back for LAFCO review and a response to the court that has to be filed in 90 days. But with respect to all the various matters of litigation pending, this is the month of the holiday month. And getting court time or getting action is very scarce, if I may say. So I do not anticipate any significant action or progress in matters until into the start of the new year. That concludes my report.
Thank you so much for your report. And I will see if there are any questions or comments from the board. I'm seeing none. Let's go out to the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on the district council's report?
Chair Adams, I see no raised hands.
And there are no raised hands. Thank you very much. With that, we will tell you how much we appreciate your report and the very critical and informative news that we've received just now. Okay, and with that now, I will go to my directors and see if there's anyone who has any report to provide to us, including the AB 1234 reports on trips, conference attendance, and meetings. George? Thank you. Yes, Karen? Yes, Ms. Paul?
I would just like to share that I attended a Land Watch event as a private citizen, but there were a lot of local elected officials there, and the keynote speaker was the superintendent of the Monterey Peninsula, the Monterey School District, public school district, and he spoke about all the ways that the lack of affordable housing impacts the schools, the children, the teachers. It was very compelling. Just a reminder, we all know this, but it's a reminder of how essential it is to get the CDO lifted so that affordable housing can be built, and how important it is for the well-being of the community. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. I think there were many of us who were in attendance and were very impressed with Dr. Diffenbaugh's presentation to Land Watch. Any other comments or questions from the board? Yes.
One comment. Well, last meeting of Monterey One Water, I tried to attend by Zoom. They went into closed session and locked the meeting up and never opened up again. So I see we got somebody from Monterey One listening. That meeting was locked up for the whole thing. So I will start showing up to their meetings to find out what's going on and keep everyone informed. And while I got the mic at this time, I want to wish everyone a happy holidays and a Merry Christmas, since we're going into that mode. So thank you all.
Thank you very much for your comments. Always well received. Okay, with that, we will continue to move forward, and we will now go to the public hearing component of our meeting. And I think we are going to open the public hearing. The first one being consider the adoption of January through March quarterly water supply strategy and budget. And I believe that will be Jonathan Lear, who will
Yes,
be
Chair.
walking us through. Hi,
Yes.
good. Oh,
Yes, Chair Adams, yeah, I'm here. Good evening, Board of Directors. This is in fact public hearing item number 11, and it is the adoption of the January through March 2024 quarterly water budget. Go to the next slide, please, Sarah. When we go through the formation of this quarterly water budget, we look at what we think the climate may be, and we also look at all the regulations that are shaping the different project operations that we want to support to make sure that we will have the infrastructure. There's a bunch of the same discussions you had earlier with the general manager were had at that meeting as well, trying to really nail down what we should expect with ASR. As Dave mentioned, the climate predictor from NOAA is saying they still think more than average rain for the next 3 months due to the El Nino conditions. So we should include in the budget as if the system is going to be operating in the ASR injection mode. Next slide, please. The mini court orders or regional board orders that we consider are listed in front of you. They shape when and how we can use the system to have the most harvest the water in the most environmentally beneficial way. And we want to try to schedule all of the 3376 river production this water year, not have the same situation that we had at the close of last water year. So that was a topic of conversation as well. For ASR, we currently have just over 2,150 acre feet in the ground in storage. We decided, of course, to leave the balance in storage and redecide after the close of the ASR season to see if it is needed for drought relief or any type of augmentation of any of the water supplies in order to get to the end of the water. And currently, if the stream flows are being met, injection will be initiated. If table 13 water right flows are met, we will start counting the appropriate amount of water allowed to be diverted through that water right into the general manager's report and how we tally water. And the pure water Monterey operations, the quarterly water budget group decided to continue to recover the pure water Monterey water at the rates it's injected over Q2 of 2024. Next slide, please. We also assumed that we were going to be using the full allocation of the Seaside Basin coastal sub areas during water year 2024, and we will reassess again in the summer if we will recover ASR. It includes, of course, moving forward with a 1-to-1 input output. There was some discussion of if that could be moved around, and I think we're to benefit different project operations, and we're waiting to hear back from CalAm if that's an operational mode that may be beneficial for wet water, but may not financially be. But I think Dave is a much better grasp of that than I do. And this was developed on December 6th, 2023 by the Quarterly Water Budget Group, which is our district, CalAm, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, the United States Wildlife Service of National Marine Fisheries, and the State Water Board. Next slide, please. This is the budget that was talked about and agreed upon by the group. If we start in the upper left-hand corner, we will see the Carmel Valley alluvial aquifer, and it's been divided into upper and lower subunits. We are showing in January the upper subunits operating. This, of course, assumes that we get the rain we need. I think based on statistics in the past, if we get about 2 inches of rain, we'll fill and spill and enter into operate the operational zone of our permits, and we would turn these wells on in the upper valley, use the lower valley, and those would support ASR diversion as well as table 13 diversion and be used to meet the component of the demand of the main system. The remainder of the water needed to meet the system demand for these 3 months will come out of the Seaside groundwater basin, where we have some amount coming out of the coastal sub areas. That's the native water from the adjudication. We have 0 ASR recovery, as we mentioned earlier. We have Sand City desalination at 25, and then the recovery of pure water Monterey at 350. So we have what we think would be a total system demand for supporting all of system demand and water projects of 918, 1,047, and 1,118 for the months of January, February, March, respectively. Should pure water Monterey inject more than 350, the difference would likely come out of the amount of river production or coastal sub-area production, as to save those sources to moving into the summer. And so That concludes the summary of the budget. Go to the next slide, which is a summary slide, and I can. So the recommendation of the group and district staff is to adopt this budget for the main system for the second quarter of water year 2024. And should it be adopted tonight, district staff will file it at do the appropriate CEQA actions at Monterey County. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much for that succinct presentation. Is there any member of the board that wishes to ask questions or make comments on this item? Yes, Mr. Riley.
On the memo itself, I hate to just pull out one sentence and make a point about it, but I do. Anyway, so it's page 2. It's at the bottom of the big paragraph on the bottom at the half below the half line. There's a sentence in there. It says CalAm will schedule the recovery of pure water Monterey water stored in the Seaside Basin with the goal of removing all water injected over the operational reserve for 2024. I'm trying to wrap my head around what does that really mean? Because I thought we wanted to maximize the water that stays in the basin in order to maximize the water we take from the river.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if this fit that definition.
Well, you may have heard John earlier mention that we've talked about maybe moving some of the extraction of pure water Monterey around. But conceptually, it's still within the company's same fiscal year, which is, I believe, a calendar year. What this statement means, first off, it means we're going to get them our 3,500 over any amounts that we would also be putting in the operational reserve, which we own. So the over the operational reserve means we still have some amount that we need to put in as we move forward with the expansion. If there's sufficient waters, we're not going to deliver them more than 3,500, but we'll deliver them. If there's more than 3,500, we'll put some in the operational reserve. The goal is to try to build up that operational reserve, similar to how we tried to build up ASR reserves as a drought mechanism protection. But we deliver the 3,500. But yes, the goal, your two sources of stored water now are really our operational reserve of pure water and ASR. And so the goal is to maximize the storage of ASR versus the use of ASR balances. So this past year, the thing we were a little unhappy about was about 950 acre feet of Carmel River water right was left untapped, and about 820 or 800 and some odd of stored ASR water was tapped. We want to try to avoid that.
We want to reverse that.
We want to reverse that, right? You're never going to get right on the number for the river, but the goal is to try to manage it that way. Now, when it's raining and you've also got table 13 water rights coming in, now the company is looking at, well, what's my demand in the Carmel Valley? Can I meet that with some of this table 13? And so the challenge is going to be, can you meet that with table 13? Can you do diversions to go into injection for ASR storage? And can you somehow leverage more of your normal Carmel River water right? And the only two ways we can see doing that is by either reversing the Monterey pipeline, which is pretty unlikely, or pushing more of the Carmel River water through the distribution system towards New Monterey, Old Monterey, Seaside, and maybe deferring some of the taking of pure water Monterey water out of the ground and trying to wait to later in the winter and then early spring and make it up so that.
In order to make that happen, though, CalAm needs to work with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's sometimes things work in a spreadsheet, but they don't work in
Operations.
reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, reality. So.
Okay. Okay, I just remember what we talked about a few months ago, and I didn't know whether this was altering that perspective, but it's not. And that's, I just wanted to
Yeah.
confirm that. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Albert?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Dave, been talking about Monterey One Water, peaking that plant up during this time period. Are they gonna, two questions. Are they gonna do that?
Yeah.
To peak it up? And is Monterey One Water involved in these meetings of setting this quarterly water agenda?
No. But we interact with Monterey One Water on a regular basis. I mean,
Okay,
weekly
so-
in and out.
So they're gonna start peaking that plant up and getting more water into the basin?
Yep.
And if it doesn't start raining, and we've been sitting up here debating, when would you find, well, you know automatically, but when would it get back to the board or the public that we are not taking water out of the Carmel River yet?
Yeah.
Because,
No, we'll do a complete spot check on the weather, end of January, end of February. You don't want to rely on, well, I guess it was 2017, we had a very late rain. And remember the March miracle back in 98?
yeah,
As I always say, you know, praying for rain is not a strategy, but we do need to know where we are, really at the end of December, but definitely the end of January. What kind of water year are we looking at?
and I know it's hard to notify the board, but through you, will we know that, okay, Cal-Am's still taking water out of the basin? That way I understand, no water is coming out of the river yet until they flip, the
Yeah.
problem that I had last year.
Yeah,
Last winter, you told us what was going on. And
Well, and we'll update you regularly
Right,
because
thank
when we do the compliance report and we turn to the page with the different sources, that's where you'll begin to see whether we're over relying or under relying on different sources. So we'll have that discussion. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you for your questions. Any other questions from the board? Okay, let's go out to the public and see if there's any member of the public who wishes to make comments on this item.
Chair Adams, I do have a raised hand.
Okay, can please go ahead.
And caller ending in 902. Yes, you would like to identify yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Nina Beatty. I wanted to comment on this item in view of the recent Monterey County Weekly article on fish tagging by the district. Since this has to comply with regulations and minimize taking of fish in terms of the water that comes out of the district. I was really shocked by that article. By the way, the fish tagging the district does, tagging doesn't even really describe what it says. It's fish barbaric that maims the fish, inserts large equipment that will emit a signal when it passes equipment so that people in desks can count them. It's not a safe practice for the fish. It not only injures them, but traumatizes them. And I wonder how many fish develop infections and how many die as a result of this, quote, tagging. And also the equipment interferes, the body's development and functioning. And when you reduce, as the fish are traveling on a river that has septic tanks and as well as toxins from adjoining homes and businesses, I would urge that the ASR taking from the river be reduced during the months that the rainy season drops off, because these fish are going to need higher flows of water to reduce the concentration of toxins and pathogens to even give them a chance of surviving. And I also would like, as a separate item, of course, for the district to revisit doing this to these beautiful aquatic beings. It's not science. It's universities or some so-called experts in ivory towers come up with these ideas that they think are going to be fine. And but I don't think any human in the room wants to have someone stun them, cut a long slice in their bodies proportional to their height without any anesthetic, and insert a proportionally sized emitting device in their bodies and leave that wound gaping open. It just makes no sense. So I hope that the ASR retrieval will be reduced given the already stressed situation with the steelhead. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Are there any other people online?
Chair Adams, I see no other raised hands.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think on this item, we're going to need to have a vote to consider adopting or consider approving the proposed production strategy for the distribution system for the period of January through March.
I move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. So we have George Riley and Ian Oglesby. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. With that, we will close that item of public hearing and move forward to item number 12, which is to receive the Pension Reporting Standards Government Accounting Standards Board Statement Number 68, the Accounting Valuation Report. We have Suresh Pradesh, excuse me, speaking.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. This is, excuse me.
We're all having trouble.
This is the annual reporting of the pension plan. We go through this every year. I've got a very short slide to go over just explaining what this is, what the item is. Next slide, please. So we are regulated by Government Accounting Standards Board, which is in short for GASB. They were established in '84. It's a government body that actually produces the standards that are to be followed by public agency. And so the pension reporting and the next item, OPEB reporting, is all part of the GASB standards that were introduced. And I'll go over those. Next slide, please. So in June 2012, GASB board basically approved a new reporting statement, which was called GASB statement number 68. And what it was is that basically to be implemented by June 2015 financials. And that was to report all of the pension obligations on the financial statements. Now, keep in mind, prior to June 2012, we were still reporting the pension liabilities, but they were just reported as a disclosure on the financial statement. So basically as a note. And what GASB board said, no, not as a note. You have to put it on your financial statements as a liability. So that's what changed the whole game for pension reporting. And so we have basically complied with it since our 2014-2015 financial statements. So we have been in compliance with the GASB statement number 68. Next slide, please. So why do we have to report it? It's because the district provides the pension benefits to its employees through CalPERS. And CalPERS itself, basically the state came out with a PEPRA reform back in 2012, I believe, as well. So anybody that got hired prior to January 1, 2013, they would get the what's called a classic member benefit, and that's what I've got listed there, 2% at 55 pension formula. And anybody that got hired after January 1, 2013, they would actually go on the PEPRA reform plan, which was called the PEPRA member plan, and that was the 2% at 62. I can't see that far. I've also noted the number of employees in the district's demographic of employees. How many employees are actually on the classic plan and how many employees are actually on the PEPRA plan? So currently we have, as of today, we have 12 and 12, exactly the same number of employees in classic and PEPRA. Next slide, please. In the report itself that we have attached to the staff note, there's going to be some terminology. One of them is the TPL, which is a total pension liability. And so basically just a little snapshot of what the TPL is. Next slide. Also have some terminology in there, which is the fiduciary net position and also the net pension liability. Those two terminologies are also frequently used in the report itself, spelled out and also abbreviated as well. Next slide. So the NPL, or the net pension liability. So this is what we are reporting on the financial statement. So as you can see on the screen, basically as of June 30th, 2022, the district's NPL stood at a little over $7 million. It's a huge jump from prior fiscal year, which was June 30th, 2021. You can see it was a $3.5 million. Now, prior to that, you can see that there was a significant reduction from a prior year. So what I'm trying to say is this is not like a stable number that we can rely on. This is basically predicated based on how the market's doing. CalPERS investment and what they are expected to do is they are expected to get a discount rate of return of 6.8%. They have changed that over the years. Prior to 2020, it was 7.35%. They gradually reduced it. In 2020, they went from 7.25 to 7. And then in 2021, they went to 6.8, and now it's at 6.8. And then basically what I'm also showing is the next line, which is the investment rate of return. So this is the actual rate of return. And you can see they were expecting a 7% in 2020, they got a 4.7%. So they lost out about 2%. They were expecting again 6.8 in 21, and they got a 21.2%. That was a huge year. Everybody was happy, and that's the reason why our NPL actually went down from $6 million to about $3.5 million, that's a $24 to $25 million reduction. And then you can see what happened in 2022. The expected rate of return was 6.8. They yielded negative 6.1. So the actual difference there is 12.9%. So they lost out 12.9%, what their predicated rate of return should have been. And so that's what basically bumped our then up the NPL, the net pension liability, by about $3.5 million. The last line is basically the funding status. What it just basically shows the assets against liabilities, what we have in the plan itself, how much are we funded. And the very last line, the dollar amount, is basically something that we have done ourselves. We have set aside money towards the pension plan. And as of June 30th, 2022, we had $400,000, but the fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2023, we had about $500,000 in the bank. So towards pension. Next slide, please. This just shows the change in liability line. We can find $3.5 million decrease. That's actually should have gone up. The arrow should have.
And the other way.
Yeah, the arrow should have been on the other side. But that's basically showing why the liability changed to $3.5 million, because the difference in what PERS had expected and what they actually yielded. So please. This is just showing the investment rate of return to PERS, and I'm showing on the left-hand side, it's 5 years overall. As you can see, 2021 was actually the best one. But then look on the right side, which is basically periodically intervals at 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years, and then 30 years. So what PERS does, they balance the portfolio based on a 20-year rate of return on average. And so if you can see, their rate of return is about 6.9%, and their discount rate is 6.8. So they are, on a long-term basis, they are basically where they want. They're not where they wanted to be, but it's 7.25%, and that's one of the reasons why they have decreased gradually to 6.8. So the benchmark on 20-year rate of return, that's exactly in line with their portfolio where they are. Yeah. Given, every year it is going to fluctuate. Sometimes you can have a good year, sometimes you can have a bad year. But overall, when you balance it out over a 20-year period, it should balance out. Next slide, please. So what have we done? So as I had mentioned, the district basically addressed the unfunded pension obligation. Starting in 2018, 2019, we started setting aside $100,000 each year. Gradually, every year, we've been putting it aside with the budget itself. So as of June 30th, 2023, we had $500,000 set aside. Now, if we would have started this program over 20 years ago, we'd be great. We'd have $22 million in the bank. But nonetheless, we have started the program. Every budget cycle, we have made a priority of setting aside money. And so that's what we have been doing. The current fiscal year 23-24, that also includes $100,000, so which means end of fiscal year 24, we would have $600,000 addressed towards the pension. Next slide, please. So what we are recommending is basically receiving the pension report. There is no other action required. It's basically just receiving the information just so that it is shared. Shared. I guess the 6 to 8 numbers pension obligation numbers are. And it's just a reporting of information, as I had mentioned, but this number will also show up on the actual when we bring it to the board next month. This number will be listed as a liability, and it has been listed for last several years. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you for your presentation. And let me see if there are any members of the board who have questions at this point. Yes, Mr. Oglesby.
Thank you, Chair. Where do we get the $100,000 amount from? It doesn't seem like it's a percentage of anything. Where did that number come from?
No, basically just wanted to see money, and we started off with $100,000, and we said, okay, at least let's just keep going with $100,000. The plan is the long-term solution. $100,000. It's not, the goal is not to fund it in any one year. Basically, that's going to be a big sticker shock on the budget itself. So with $100,000, and it's not only 100,000, it's 100,000 for pension, 100,000 for OPEB, so $200,000 each budget cycle. We've just come up with a number.
And with the passage of time, our proportion of post-PEPRA employees goes up. And the way their benefit is set up, there's less of an accumulation of a liability. So one would imagine that, if you get through 10 more years, we'll have 1.5 million in the bank, and the obligation itself could come down if investment rates are good, but it'll also be reduced somewhat because of retirements and so forth. It'll no longer be our liability on the pre-PEPRA crowd. Well, we still have to pay in to cover the liability. So it'll exist, but it won't be accumulating as quickly because of the new crowd of people coming in.
Yeah, it won't be a significant number as pre-PEPRA employees.
Yeah.
Thank you for your question. Is there any other member of the board?
I don't remember that we agreed to the 100,000 a year. I mean, I like the idea of doing that. Is there a threshold at which that might not make sense? I know you don't want to fund the entire thing, but it's just a shot. It's just a guess about where you want to cap it.
Yeah.
Is it about 25% or 20%?
It's not a high percentage.
Okay.
It's a small number.
Mhm.
We have this conversation all the time. It's like a perpetual mortgage that kind of,
Yeah.
you pay a little, but it keeps going. But you just saw in the last 3 years how it came down significantly due to investment rate and went up significantly. So all we can offer, there's 4 approaches that public agencies take. One is they try to fund it and they replace it with known debt. So you get rid of some of the uncertainty. You can call it a sidecar financing, but you issue taxable debt, take a big chunk of money, you put it in, you reduce your liability, and now your future liability is a known cost of debt.
Is that a note?
Yeah. Another approach is to take money and sequester it in a trust fund. You can't get back at that. And it works to offset. But in either case, if you did a sidecar financing or had a trust fund, you're funding it, and then your liability may change the next year, certainly off and on in the next several years. And then there's discretionary set-asides, which is what we're doing. They're not very big. And then the fourth is, don't worry about it. Just keep paying your annual due bill and wait and see what happens in the future. And cities have a harder time than rate setting utilities because you can always adjust rates to increase your revenues. Cities that are subject to changes in tax collections due to economic downturns and TOT taxes, things like that, it can get harder. So a big liability number in cities is probably a little scarier than it is for those who have more control over their revenues. And so as of right now, we still have an 8.325% of water charges, and water rates and charges continue to go up even as demand remains flat. So we've got this piece of revenue over here that is growing. And so we've just not seen the reason to do anything yet because our liability hasn't been so huge that it's scary. And our control over our revenues is still somewhat, we're in a pretty good place. And you have other reserves that, in all honesty, right now, discretionary reserves that exceed the pension liability. So we're not suggesting that you go take those reserves and pay it off. But you're in a pretty good place.
And if we're successful under the Measure J process, this will look like a crazy number. Because it's the number of employees regardless.
Well,
of
we
what
can deal with that when we cross,
When
we
it
can
hits.
cross that
If
bridge when we
that
come to it.
If that happens.
Okay, so with that, let me take it out to the public and see if there's any member of the public who wishes to make comment on this item.
Chair Adams, I see no raised hands.
Okay, thank you. With this item, we do not need to have a motion or a vote. It was to simply receive the information. And now we will move to item number 13, which is to receive the GASB standards number 75.
Similar item to the previous item.
Thank you.
Slides. Yeah. So this is another reporting standard, and here it basically changed. So back in, next slide, please. Again, set by the Government Accounting Standards Board. I won't go over that again. Next slide, please. So back in 2004, GASB issued statement number 45, and what that basically did was it required a financial reporting requirement for OPEB, and that basically wanted the current year liability to be put on the book. So let's just say you've accrued liability for that current reporting year.
And just real quick, OPEB means?
Oh, other post-employment benefits. I thought it was in the title. Must have missed it. Yeah, OPEB means other post-employment benefits. So basically what it required us to do is only report on the current year liability. So if your current year liabilities for the employees would have been 100,000, we'd put 100,000 on the financial statements, not like what Pension 68, GASB 68 did. And that was to be implemented by fiscal year 2009-10 financials. We did record the current year OPEB obligations on the financial statements, means we were in compliance when it was required us to put on the financial statements with the 2009-10 financial statements. Next slide, please. Then after GASB 68 came out, GASB board again looked at that and said, well, wait a minute, if we are requiring the pension liability to be put in the books as a whole, OPEB needs to do the same thing. So what they did was issued GASB statement number 75 in June of 2015. And they said, well, guess what? You have to record the entire liability, not just the current year liability obligation. And so that was to be implemented by the June 2017 financials. And as it says in there, record the total OPEB obligations, not just the total, not just the current year OPEB obligation, but the total. And we have complied with that since 2017-18 financial statements. So we have been in compliance with both 68, 75, and even 45. Next slide, please. Why do we do that? District provides healthcare benefits to retirees. So basically we reimburse them the premiums. And so what we have to do is basically, since we are providing the healthcare premiums, we have to do the OPEB numbers. I mentioned in here, we have created a tier 2. Basically, when PEPRA came out with the reform, there was no reform on the OPEB side, but district in-house, when negotiated labor negotiation, we decided to create a tier 2 plan. So basically, tier 2 plan was to reduce the benefit of the retiree healthcare cost. Anybody hired prior to July 1, 2013, they get the 2 benefits there. Basically, if it's less than 15 years of service, you get $540 a month in retiree medical costs. If you spend more than 15 years with the district and retire, in 2023 numbers, it's 1,413. Keep in mind, it gets escalated each year. And then the tier 2 benefit was, regardless of how many years you spend with the district, you retire from the district, you get $540 more. I've also noted how many employees in those two tier plans. Tier 1 employees, as of today, we have 11 employees. Tier 2, we have 13 employees. So it's kind of like getting away from call the classic employee group to the reform groups. Next slide, please. Correct. So again, some terminology, OPEB liability. What exactly is the OPEB liability? In there. Next slide. Again, the FNP or fiduciary net position, and then the NOL, which is the net OPEB liability.
Can we go back to Mark's question? Because I don't think it's that those are all retired. Those are
Existing employees, correct?
Existing employees who will fall into those categories when they retire. Yeah, because so no, our
No, that doesn't capture. That only count the 24 employees that we have. How many of them are on the tier 1 plan? How many of them are on tier 2 plans?
and all of the currently retired employees,
Tier 1 plan.
they're all tier 1 and there's only
Oh,
about
no, except. No, all of them on tier 1 plan, but they are segregated between those two because they did not have 15 years of service.
and there's only about 9, 10 now?
No, total retirees we have today, 13.
13. So there's another 13 that you didn't see on that slide. Yeah.
Total, when you look in the total liability, numbers, it takes into account everybody.
They're the first 13.
That's exactly it.
But not all first 13 basically are on the tier, on the $1,400 plan. Next slide, please. So the net liability, OPEB liability again over a 3-year period, and this is basically something similar to what I showed on the GASB 68 side. Not much changes here. It's very subtle changes. 21, $4.5 million. There was a change in 2022. A little over $5 million, and you can see the reason for that was the discount rate changed from 1.93% to 3.69. And then 23 numbers, it's gone down a little bit, about $60,000. And the reason for that is because the discount rate has gone up from 3.69 to 3.86. The funding status on this, it's if you look at the funding status as compared to GASB 68, this one is only about 10% for the 23 numbers. So we've got about 10% funded, and that's basically taking into account the $500,000 over a $5 million liability. Next slide. This just shows change. And the liability has gone down on this one and basically just shows the reason why. Primarily, the reason was the discount rate coming from 3.69 to 3.86. And next slide, please. So again, what have we done? Very similar to what on the pension 68 side I had mentioned, we've set aside a side fund. Every year we are funding $100,000 each year. As of 23 on the OPEB side, we also have about $500,000 in the current budget year 23-24, $100,000. I'm saying $100,000 for 23-24, but as budget supports, the district can always set aside more. We only pick the $100,000 number. There's nothing magical about that. But we were able to balance the budgets with $100,000 set aside. I mean, if the district can afford it, why not? Next slide, please. So again, very similar to 68. Basically, this is just to report the information that we put it in the public domain what the outstanding obligations are.
Thank you very much, Suresh. Are there any questions from the board? Yes.
Yes, Chair. So Russ, I believe at administrative meeting, our audit is going to be late this year. We usually have it this month.
No, it'll be in January.
It's going to be in January, and this stuff is in that.
Yeah, the numbers are in part of the audit report.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the reason why we are reporting is so that we've already thrown it out there, and then these numbers do fall on the for report as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the board? Take it out to the public. Any members of the public wish to make a comment on this item?
Chair Adams, I see no raised hands.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we will close item 13 and move forward with, there's no need for a vote on that one either. Item number 14, which is to consider adopting a resolution authorizing exception to the CalPERS 180-day wait period for hiring a retiree not unlike Suresh Prasad. So we're going to have a presentation today by our HR coordinator, contract coordinator. Is that correct?
Yeah, it should be a short presentation.
Okay, there we go.
Hi, Simona.
Good evening, everyone. Not so much a presentation, but just a quick little overview of the adoption of resolution 2023-15. So as Dave mentioned earlier, Suresh is going to be retiring beginning January 5th, and we've hired his replacement, who you all have met, which is Nashil Bali. And there's a short period of time between now and when Suresh is retiring for Nikhil to get trained on everything. We don't think that's an adequate amount of time because this is such a high level executive position. And Suresh has 12 years of knowledge that he has to impart onto Nikhil. So we would like to hire Suresh as a retired annuitant as soon as he retires. Typically, there's a 180-day waiting period before he could begin, but we do want him to start right away so he is available for Nikhil to answer any questions. And then this will be a year-long contract at a max of 960 hours. And we don't anticipate we are going to need him for all those hours, but it will be nice to have him available when we need him, particularly around audit time and some other times during next year.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any questions from any member of the board? Yes, Karen.
One, in the resolution, the proposed resolution, the fifth whereas, I have a question.
Yes.
This is about you certifying that the person benefiting from the exception is not receiving a golden handshake. And I think there's either I'm not understanding something or there's a mistake. It says, Suresh and so forth, certify that Dave Stolt has not and will not receive a golden handshake. And don't we mean to say that Suresh will not receive it? Or am I missing something? So Suresh is the person who's, we're authorizing an exception for Suresh. And it says it's a condition that that the person benefiting from such an exception not receive a golden handshake.
I think that's an
So-
error. I don't see how
Yeah.
we could have that in here.
Yeah. And the other resolution in the next item, it's the same thing. It says it's about Tom Lin, making an exception for
Right,
Tom
right.
Lindbergh.
Yeah, that might be an error then.
And the same for the next one as well. Well, he's not going to get a golden handshake, that's for sure.
I like certifying days.
I'm not sure I like where this is going. Yeah, that's really unusual. And I wonder, we should go back and look at the last one we did too. What was?
Well, yeah, I think because I used like a template from the last time, I think when we hired Larry, and I just replaced the names, so on the last one, it was Suresh and Larry, but I think that's how they've been written. I'm not even.
Can't imagine that there would be any reason why that would be required to be in here.
Yeah. Yeah. So on both of these, our recommendation is approval subject to a language change in this clause that district council will agree with. So we'll check it and see, and we'll run it past Dave.
We'll be okay with that language?
Yeah.
You could adopt now to swap the names where it says Suresh Prasad in the fifth whereas with Dave Stoll, it says Dave Stoll with Suresh Prasad.
Yeah.
So I'm certifying that he's not received a golden handshake. Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Can't blame the new guy on this.
All right, so let's try to get this in order. Okay, so we have received we've had an opportunity to look at thank you very much for your presentation, Ms. Mausbacher. So now we need to have, let me ask if any other member of the board. Karen, thank you so much for catching that. That was wonderful.
That's why there are 7 board members.
Yeah. Any member of the public who wishes to comment on this item?
I see no raised hands, Chair Adams.
Okay, so now we will bring it back to our needing a motion. And is there anyone who would like to craft the motion that will bring forward our approval of this item with the modification in the fifth whereas that we reverse the names of Suresh Prasad and David Stoltz to make it compliant with the intention of our motion? Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Okay, and we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much. Any opposed? Okay, great. So that's item number 14. And let's move forward now to item 15, which is a very similar one. And Suresh, I think, do you want to say words about that as we move forward with it? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
We're done with Suresh.
Yeah,
Okay.
if-
I'm done.
And if need be, Jonathan Lear can weigh in, but it's really
It's the same thing.
very uncomplicated. When we were forced to cancel our October meeting, we weren't able to finish the recruitment of the new meter position. Tom, who is retiring as of the end of the month, Tom Lindbergh, has agreed to come back to do some training, probably through maybe February. But it will not be long-term nor consume all 930 hours.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for that. Is there any board member who has a question on this?
Fiscal point of view, we discussed during the administration subcommittee meeting issue that confirmation from district council that because of the nature of our entity is public entities, the labor code doesn't apply. And what we mean by that is that both of these retiring employees, items 14 and 15, to the extent that they're keeping their time and they're assisting, they're not required to be paid a minimum of 4 hours, which would normally be the case under the labor code. It could literally be time piecing 30 minutes here, 3 hours there, could be a full day, but basically it's literally only when they're working that keeping the time that they get paid. So basically,
And they're not under a new set of benefits. They're under their retired annuity benefits.
Great. Okay, any member of the board, anybody else have comments? Okay, any member of the public? Yes, we
Yeah.
have to change language on that one as well. Any member of the public who wishes to comment on this item?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
Okay, so thank you very much. That'll bring us back for a motion to consider adoption of resolution 2023-16, which is the CalPERS exemption. And once again, item with the change of names, interposition of the names of Dave Stolt and Tom Lindbergh in the fifth whereas. Is there a motion to approve this?
I so move.
Okay, so this time we'll take Mark and second by Karen.
Sure.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope, seeing none. All right, we will close item number 15 and go to item 16, which is to review and consider adopting the board meeting schedule for calendar year 2024 through February of 2025. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the board schedule? And does that work with you, Madam Vice Chair? Okay, very good. That's important.
And just a quick heads up, because of Martin Luther King's birthday and President's Day, instead of moving to a Wednesday or Thursday, we moved earlier in the month for President's Day on a Monday and later in the month for Martin Luther King on a Monday. Past practice when Mayor Pendergrass was still on the board was to not conflict with the Monterey One Water Board meetings. That's not a problem anymore. So we think it's better to at least keep a
Keep it on
Monday
Mondays. I
rather
agree.
than a Wednesday, Thursday, whatever.
Thank you for explaining that change. Okay, is there any further questions or comments on this meeting schedule? Okay, you don't think we should make the world just work for you?
It's all about me.
With that, well, let's go out to the public and see if anyone else has any comments on this. Any member of the public wishes to comment on item number 16?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
Okay, great. With that, we will have to have a motion. All in favor to accept the meeting schedule for calendar year 2024, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Nope, none. Very good. Okay. And now we will go to item number 17. which
Madam
is-
Chair, we are looking for a nomination for next year's board chair and next year's board vice chair, and a reaffirmation that you would like your board treasurer to be the incoming CFO, Michelle Bali, and your board secretary to be your current board secretary, Dave Stoll.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. Any member of the board wish to make any comments on this? Okay, seeing none, let's take it out to the public. Any member of the public wish to make comment on this?
Chair Adams, I see no raised hands.
Okay, very good. So we are looking now, actually, I think we just follow the rules. So, which means that we will be going to our new chair, which will be Amy Anderson, and division representing Division 5, and our new incoming chair, also known as the vice chair, will be George Riley, representing District 2. Now it indicates, sorry. Yes, there.
No, that's
not
so
correct.
for next year. That's next year. So these are the next 4 years.
I see. Sorry, my bad. Okay. Thank you. Could I have a simple motion to confirm the rotation of the rules? Thank you. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Very good. All right. All in favor of following the rules of rotation, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Nope, none. All right. Thank you very much. That was number 17.
CFO is.
However, that is in the rules.
See?
So it is.
We knew what we were doing. We were following the rules. Okay. Okay, with that, I'm going to close item number 17. Move to item 18, which is simply the report on activity progress of the contracts over $25,000. And these are all part of the informational items in staff report, which we generally just take for our ability, our opportunity to read at our leisure, rather than having it be part of the meeting, which means that my next action is to adjourn the meeting officially. Yes. Yes. After the election meeting. Okay, all right, so we should have had the informational items in the staff reports prior to the, well, we were close to following the rules, but just a little bit off. So with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 7:37 PM, and thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.